let's start this interview off with tell us your name, tell us your position, and tell us exactly what your role is.
Sure. I'm Dr. Pamela Pruitt, and I am the Executive Director for the Center for Diversity and Inclusion at Rider University, which is located in central um, New Jersey, and that's between Trenton and Princeton. My role is to support all the efforts on campus in the way of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I am not the Chief Diversity Officer at this time. I was the Senior Diversity Officer until recently when we brought on board a Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Barbara Lawrence. So I will be, she's not my supervisor, but I will support her efforts. Her scope is going to be a lot of faculty-driven initiatives, as well as overarching initiatives that come from the cabinet, the president's cabinet. My role will continue as it's been. I just completed building a 2,100 square foot Center for Diversity and Inclusion in a very visible place on campus. And, I'm here to work with the university, support its mission, and also to uphold the Inclusive Excellence Plan, in addition to the Student Affairs Strategic Plan. So there's a lot of things that I have going on in that regard. And it's my life is a joy in my position.
That's so beautiful. It's amazing that you are in this position at such a time as this, because as we know, the university landscape as it is now is so much different with COVID-19. Can you talk to us about what your work has been like since COVID-19 and how are you guys connecting with students now?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, my life changed when George Floyd got killed.
Wow.
And I do want to mention that I am also the chair for the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, NADIHE. So I'm the chair for the Northeast Tri-State chapter, which is New Jersey, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And I'm saying that because being in that role was really great for me during that time, because I was able to talk to other diversity officers in higher education at a very intimate level. And all of us were experiencing the same pressure, stress, or whatever that was placed on us after George Floyd got killed. I guess it's a good thing that it happened because it had to happen. Racism is still prevalent. We are still fighting racial and social justice issues. And so after George Floyd got killed, I took one workshop that I had been giving to college students, to faculty, staff, to students called Tension in America. I turned into a night Zoom meeting, and that changed my life forever on this campus. We were able to start programming during times when we would not be giving programming out of my space. We would be gone for the summer. That particular program happened on June 3rd. In 2020. And my mailbox went from maybe 100 emails a day to 300 to 500. I mean, it really exploded. But the beauty of it all is that I was able to galvanize our student leaders, and I talked to them from identity-based organizations, which I oversee as far as helping support their efforts. And I just simply asked them, what did they need from us at that time? We didn't have a chief diversity officer at all. That was, I can't remember when they were actually exploring that opportunity. I think they were already thinking it. They had a committee formed and they were talking about doing that. But basically, the students' voices were very important to me. And it changed a lot about my work. I always listen to the student voices. When we built the center, I didn't do it just build a center. I had focus groups. But through the year, in that meeting, they told me that they wanted to have education They felt that everybody needed to be educated because the cultural competency level at our university was not stellar by any stretch. And so I galvanized the faculty because we have content experts right here on campus. So I went to work galvanizing the faculty and talking to the students all the time. We wound up having a vigil for the victims because by, I would say, early July, we'd had several of those murders that occurred in America. And the students were grieving, and we needed to find a space for that. A lot of times we have to process, I always call it like an open wound, and people want us to talk about our open wound when things like that happen. But we need to provide spaces, I think, for students to grieve and to express. And that's what we did with the vigil. And we've had a couple of vigils through the process. We didn't have like protest or anything like that. We did ours through a more vigil, quiet, reflective way in bringing peace to our campus. And I galvanized the faculty to provide us with workshops. So we, like, for example, in July did 3 weeks on racism in America. We did a historical week, we did a current week, and we talked about what racism is going to be like in the future and what we could do to perhaps eradicate racism. And speaking of that point, because of critical race theory is this conversation, you can't eradicate racism without talking about race.
Wow.
It's really very important. And that's what we did. We talked about that. And then and we did a lot of other workshops. For example, one faculty member, I pulled him in, and a law firm from our local community, Stark and Stark, a very large law firm. And we did a series which we continue. Is this a dangerous time to know your rights? And so we were able to talk to students. The first session was really very poignant, where the professor you almost thought you were looking at Ahmaud Arbery being killed because the video was on YouTube, and he actually dissected the video to show how escalation occurs. He talked about Karens. He opened it up for a lot of deep dive conversations, which actually, besides that particular series is continuing. And also we started a Real Talk series. So whenever someone sees Real Talk, they know that it's going to be a real a woke moment in the conversation. And so we a lot of things emerged. So to go back to your original question, COVID and racism kind of collided or intersected at the same time for me. And that was, there were a lot of sleepless nights. We had forums because first of all, you're dealing with COVID and you're dealing with implications and what happened with our students, especially those from the underrepresented communities during that time, with technology, with mental health, with the disparities that they incurred, those students with special needs. We had homeless students. So all of these things were happening, and racism was happening at the same time, So we had those same students worried about, well, what happens if I get stopped by the police? Will I die at that moment?
Wow.
I helped get the president, the provost, and we have colleges on our campus, so the deans of the colleges, and we had many, many late nights. So I call these bags under my eyes COVID eyes, because I couldn't sleep. I really couldn't sleep because there was just too much going on, and there was a lot of work to do, and we just did it. And then voting, so all of that came, we were coming into an election, which was a critical piece. And so we just changed the conversation to voting rights, and we went through that. And so, and it hasn't stopped for us, but it hasn't been quite as intense. So to give you an idea of the impact, again, that was during the summer. Nobody is really doing programmings per se, like we would do in a usual academic year. We reached in the summer over 2,000 people.
Wow. Wow.
Over my numbers, I think from May to May 2020 to May 2021, I, from my own small place in this university, reached 6,000 people.
Whoa. That's extraordinary.
And a lot of people did not, may feel that Zoom, we're zoomed out. But I found the opportunity in that. In fact, now that we're back, I'm doing hybrid events because some people are still wanting the safety of Zoom. And then we have others who want to come in person. They want to get back to some sort of way of life. We're never going to be like normal. What we thought was normal. I would argue that we will never have normal again. So normal, we need to forget about normal because normal is gone. We're in a new place, a new space, a new time, and we have to build. We have to build what we want our future to be. And that's going to take a lot of us being together as one. I have a mural in my new center that is graffiti art, and it says "Together as One." And also going to Amanda Gorman, and I sign it in my signature in my emails. We have to be the light. We have to be the way. We have to. Those that might be more mature have to make sure that we don't dumb down America, because we need to continue to strive toward inclusive excellence and excellence overall as human beings. We need to be more civil. We need to find civility and respect and appreciation and sensitivity and empathy in our daily lives. And a lot of that is missing. And until we get to those key ingredients, we won't be thinking about others. We'll only keep thinking about ourselves. And so my work in bringing people and places and things together, I look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And a colleague and I were talking, and he said, if we just change those words around, we might get it right. Because to me, the new word is equity, because people keep throwing the word inequality, equality. The Constitution gives us equality, supposedly. We have tenets that give us equality. But what we're missing is equity. Wow. Make me successful as an underrepresented person or as a female. I really, my pronouns, she, her, hers, and there are other identities. We need to be happy to be who we are. I talk to so many marginalized students who are not sure about how their identity is being accepted because people make such drastic statements and they make different monikers over these things, and this is not to be taken lightly. We need to really look at equity. So taking equity, putting it into everything we do, and then moving that toward being inclusive. Because you see, I don't have equity, and I'm sorry I don't put it in the title of our center, because some people might forget that word. But when I named the center, I thought, well, you can't be inclusive without being equitable. Yeah. And so therefore I thought, we could shorten the title and bring that equity piece in there. But equity, then you have inclusion. Then you can talk about belonging, because those ingredients make belonging possible. And then you got a really good diverse situation. So if you just take the D and put it on the end, and just think in those terms, we might call that a formula for success for our future.
That's so good. That's powerful. You know what, Dr. Pruitt, you didn't answer every single question that I had here today. So, but I do want to rewind back, because I have a question about diversity. But before I get there, you mentioned, as you were speaking, you kept mentioning how you go to students to really hear their voices. And I think especially in the educational realm, being a graduate myself with my MBA and then my undergraduate, I really recognized and realized that sometimes we don't have a voice on campus, even though they need our voices to make money, right? And so one of the things that I want to ask you, because you mentioned it, you said be the light, right? What are the keys to being the light? Because a lot to do with being the light requires your voice, it requires leadership qualities. So can you speak to the leadership qualities and the key ingredients to actually being the light on a college campus as an educator, and then speak to our students?
Oh, sure. It's very important that number one, we have the education, and I have to clarify. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get a job. I would argue that you go to college, and all my college came lately, but you go to college to build your thinking, your brain, your thinking skills. How are you going to be in the world? What that is going to look like? Because you can have a college degree and be slinging hamburgers. Okay, so let's be real. You can do that, but leaders, are leaders born? Are they cultivated? There are leadership skills that people gain, I guess, through their experiences or what have you. I always start with the voices and listening. I start workshops not only with my land acknowledgements for the people, indigenous people that come before me and represent the land on which we stand, but I also come into a meeting and I talk about my husband. He's my joke of the year for this, because you say something to your spouse and they go mm-hmm, and then you go, well, did you hear me? Well, yeah, I heard you. Okay, but then I go, but were you listening to me?
Wow, that's good.
Because we have voices and we can hear the voices. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of unrest, but are we listening to the voices? Are we hearing and understanding what the cries are and what the need is in the community? I don't get up to come here to please my colleagues.
Wow.
That doesn't drive me. What drives me are the students, because we have our hands on people. We don't know who they're going to be. And I will go, so I'm a God person. God is driving my life. And I go back to the story of Saul of Tarsus, who became the great Apostle Paul. Those people who raised him up when he was in peril, they didn't know who was at the end of their rope. And we as leaders don't know who is at the end of our rope.
That's good.
And we have to treat everyone as though they are going to be amazing, the next somebody, because we don't know who we have. And whatever our belief systems are or our values, we just have to watch these young emerging possible leaders and make sure that we give them everything that we have to make it equitable for them to succeed, so that they will be the leaders who will take care of us when we're old. And we need to look at it that way, because while they're with us in this university, and whether it's K through 12, whatever the experience is for a given person, wherever there's leadership, we have to keep that in mind. Equitable treatment of all is where it needs to go in order for the growth to continue for all of our future citizens of this country and others. And this is a message that can go worldwide. Wow. Because we have issues, but there's issues all over this world. Racism just didn't start and end in America. It is prevalent throughout our experience all over the world. And if I could change the world, I would just put my key little ingredients into it and see how it works. And I bet you we would have a better place to live.
Wow. Wow. Dr. Pruitt for president, people. Oh my goodness. I love that so much, and you keep mentioning too, which I love this idea about equity first, because we have to be equal before we can actually be included. Or I love the word that you used earlier, belong, right? But I'm seeing in our culture that people love to throw around the word diversity, and I just love how you switch the whole entire thing. Can you illuminate what diversity is and what is the role of diversity in students' lives to bring belonging and inclusion?
You know, I actually have been on different committees that talk about diversity.
Mhm.
And people use this word all the time. And in a lot of workshops, I have this conversation. And I first ask people what they think diversity is, because a lot of people say, oh, you know, I've been through all these workshops, I've been through this training, and they always talk about diversity, da 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 da. And I go, okay, so what do you think it is? No matter what group I'm speaking to, I get different versions of diversity.
Mhm.
And especially on a Zoom screen, and even between you and I right now, we always go to ethnicity. We always think
Wow.
ethnicity. We go there first. But I would argue, look at your screen right now. Look at my background, look at your background. We don't talk about the elements around us.
Mm.
So if you look at your whole 360 and where your space, and
Mhm.
think about the word diversity based on your definition, I could change your word to diversity, because see, you might be thinking of the characteristics that distinguish individuals, but I can say that diversity is more than that. And the more than that, you know, so yes, as an ethnic definition, or a social economic definition, or an ability definition, or however you want to look at that, no matter whether it's places, things, or people, you can be judged on diversity.
Mm.
I can walk in your office and make an opinion of you, and you can walk in my office and make an opinion of me. That's a perception. And I talk about perception a lot because people think that that's their reality and they can't change it.
Mhm.
But diversity is everywhere, and people don't look at the dimension. So I call it the dimension of diversity,
That's so good.
you know, because my room is very diverse. My center is very diverse. Um, I swear through COVID, as I was driving on a highway that I had been on many times, I told my husband, I said, look at the foliage. It is so rich. It's thicker. It's like I came out of a cave, and there was this light, and I'm looking at the trees, and I'm looking at the different species, and it's amazing of all these diverse things. And we don't give enough homage to diversity and what it really means. We only go to one place. So sitting on my committees and in meetings, I tell people, get an understanding before you start talking about diversity,
Ooh,
about what
that's
you
good.
want, you know, what do you want diversity to be today? What do you want it to be at this moment? Because diversity is a fact. So diverse is a fact. And Arthur Chan, I have a quote I'm going to make sure that you have. Arthur Chan, I use this a lot. Diversity is a fact. Equity is a choice. And too many people don't make that choice, by the way.
Mhm.
Inclusion is an action.
That's so good.
Above everything, belonging is an outcome.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And so when I sit on different committees, and one of them, so I have a definition of diversity that actually sits in a toolkit in New Jersey's Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. It took 8 people 3 months to write that definition for the college presidents, their reference in that toolkit, in case they can't figure out what diversity means.
Mm.
but it took 3 months. When I sat on a subcommittee, I'm on the President's Council for Inclusion, but we made a subcommittee to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and come up with those definitions. It took 3 of us a pretty long meeting to come up with a definition that we felt was acceptable.
Wow.
When I taught as a guest speaker, it was a public relations class. When I go in there and talk about corporate social responsibility, the consortium of companies that pretty much have come to guide principles of corporate social responsibility in the corporate world, they have their own definition of diversity. So people need to get on the same page when they are talking about diversity, because you can't go beyond that if you don't get it. And that's why if you switch that word around, so if you drop it at the back and forget about it for a minute, because we get hung up on all of the different characteristics that are
Yes, exactly.
representative of whatever we're talking about. And if we just start with equity and just say, today, I'm going to see how I put equity into my space, not equality. Equal, we got equality, but equity. How can I make you better than who you are? So right now, what's my deficit? My deficit is I can't see without these contacts in my eyes. But COVID has caused me to have a problem with the computer, because when I wasn't wearing any contacts and I wasn't probably wearing makeup and I was on a Zoom screen, probably wearing some lounging clothes, I was not wearing anything on my eyes. So the computer, all those hours, all those nights ruined something about my eyes. So I have some different deficits with my eyes. I have to make contacts give me equity to be successful and sing. I might need you to give me some equity to make me successful at having a good story come out. I have to trust that you will provide equity to me to make me look good or use my words in the right context. So, when I'm in a classroom, how do I teach a student to be where they need to be when I have so many different levels of students? I might have one that just can't get it. I'm going to have to give that student extra time. As executive director, I have students all the time that come to me, Dr. Pruitt, I'm not getting this over here. Can you help me? I thought last night I got a text from a group on campus asking me how to help get them in touch with someone who can help them, because their technology ran whack while they were having an event. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. Somebody reached out to me. I am not technically savvy. I'm pretty good, but people know that I will give them equity. I will make them I'll take them where they need to be within my capability. And when I can't do it for them, then I take them to somebody that can. But one thing that I can't tolerate is the run around and chasing tails. I have no patience for that. And so that's why I think that if we put that equity first in all situations, and then I'm gonna make you feel included and welcome. People have to feel like they want to be there, to make them feel like they want to be there. And then that brings that sense of belonging. I sat with a student yesterday who doesn't feel like they need to be in this space, but they do need to be here. They deserve to be on this planet. Everybody deserves to be here. Whatever their belief system is, they deserve to be here, no matter how crazy they may sound to us, or I may sound crazy to people a whole bunch. But don't judge me. People look at me and they say, oh, Dr. Pruitt, you probably come from this little bougie place over here and you had this kind of. I had days where I didn't have food. And if you give me chicken noodle soup, all I think about is poverty or sickness. Because when I grew up in Chicago on the South Side with my single parent, that might have been all we would have had for dinner. I was given every chance to fail. I couldn't take 3 full rides to college because my mother had no frame of reference, but she did have a frame of reference that I would not be on welfare.
Wow.
So I had to work. So my first college degree, which I got at the same time, was in 2010 when I got my associates and my bachelor's. And then I got my master's in 2014. And then I got my doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania in 2016. So I went all those years working for large corporate American companies with no college degree.
Wow.
And I was building stuff I've saved companies millions of dollars with what I had to give. And I didn't need a college education, but I do understand that having a college education has certainly pulled my head together in a way of brain power.
Mm, that's powerful. That's so powerful. Dr.
And,
Pruitt, that's so
you know,
powerful.
and connection. So,
Yeah.
let's face it, and that's what we're trying to do. And so people get it kind of confused. I'm gonna go to college so I get a job. No, you're going to go to college and get your brain right. You're going to make connections with the career development and success people, and then they're going to hook you up. But you got to have the brains to get the job. You cannot, they could hook you up all day and night. You show up and you can't even talk, So people get it, they don't grasp it. And even sports, our athletes, I put myself with my coaches here. Use me for your athletes, because these young men and women and other are going to go out into the world, and they've got to talk in complete sentences, whoever they are.
Exactly. That's so good. That's so powerful. Dr. Pruitt, one of the things that I'm stuck on is I love this ideology that you have, and I think many people are realizing it, is that just because you have a college degree, it still doesn't mean that you're actually free. And I can recall being that young Black girl I'm from Detroit. My family's originally from Detroit, but we live in Jackson, Michigan right now. But I'm from Michigan, small working class family. But thinking that college was my way out, but I got the piece of paper. And then I'm like, now what? And I had the degree, but I still wasn't free. I remember sitting in an interview, and the interview lady, she asked me, she said, what sets you apart? What makes you different? I had nothing. I didn't know what made me different. The first thing that I told her, I said, well, I'm authentic. I'm funny. She said, how do I know that? Because she didn't know me. She said, there's about 100 other Black girls just like you that want to be in media, and they have the same credentials as you. And in that moment, I said, I got to get something that sets me apart. And for me, it's my faith. For me, it's knowing my identity. And I'm gonna just say it, in Jesus Christ. That's what set me apart and allowed me to kind of tap into my leadership skills. But I want you to speak to the student who's in that similar position. They got their degree, but then they're realizing, oh my gosh, this don't guarantee no job. What would you have to say to them? What advice would you give to those students?
Well, usually I try to start with students earlier than when they have a degree.
Yeah.
Because, so for example, I have a bridge program
Okay.
for students that come from high school into college. And this is it's still a PWI, primarily white institution, predominantly white. But there's a seamless transition for these students. So they come into the Multicultural Student Leadership Institute. I see talent. I can see that talent as they're coming in. So people know that MSLI students are special because they have to be interviewed in. I don't interview them. So my students interview students. Even my student workers interview other student workers. But when they work for me or they're in my midst, I'm giving them some sort of look at the future. So we just got back a few weeks ago from a weekend away. It's a 1 semester program where I take them to a conference center, and I say on Friday when we're leaving school, I say, look, you're going to leave here as a college student, but you're going to pretend that you graduated and that your company has sent you to a conference, and I'm going to take you to a conference center. Chauncey Conference Center it's up the road a piece, just 6 miles. And when you get there, you're going to change clothes. You're going to put on clothes that you would wear to an interview, depending on your identity and how you feel that should be. Because I don't tell people how to dress, but I show them what the expectation is out in the world. And then they join me for a weekend of professional development training. So I do that for students in their first year. And then I have peer-to-peer mentoring programs that I do the same thing. Now, when you, as a student, work for me, when you're a junior, if you start working for me for first year, second year, and you get to your junior, I'm pushing you out looking for opportunities outside of this university, number one, because I don't want a student to have that piece of paper in their hand trying to say, what's next? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but when I see that situation, in fact, a lot of seniors I get a chance to talk to, and I'm talking about mainly ones that are from underrepresented groups. And I tell them, I ask them the question, so what's next? What do you got going on? Even if they need to come and sit with me and talk about that, I try to help them see something about where they could go or grow from here. I had a young person that was, she's graduating, and we were going to hire her, but she didn't want to really work for us because she wanted to go towards something that she does in the way of psychology and public service. It just so happens that I sit on the board of trustees for the Trenton Health Team. So I took her resume and I pushed it forward. I have political connections, and for poli-sci students that are graduating, that are on, and again, I try to get them earlier than later. I'm trying to talk to any of the political appointees that I know. Can you use this person to work in your office for the summer, work here in Washington? So, but I tell, I'll sit down with someone with that piece of paper, and I'll just try to flesh out what it is that they, one, like to do, and two, what they think they're good at. And if you can find the intersectionality of what you're good at and what you like to do, then you might be good at least going forward in trying to get a job. The beauty of us is that our career development and success department, they will work with a student in that situation. And I would be happy to pass that student back to them because they have the connections. But first, we have to find out what do you want to do? Because you might have that piece of paper, and like you say, like, I got it. And your degree might be in business, but then you don't really know if that's what you want to do yet, because it is what it is. I have students who I have had work for me that continue to consult me as they're moving on in the business world. And again, it has to be their decision. But because I have such a vast knowledge in corporate America, I am able to sit with students and I'm able to talk to them about what they're good at and what they, might want to do. We can talk about those things and see how real that is. And if I have any connections, I certainly will put them in touch with them. But I support, even for my first semester students that come through, I offer them the chance to have a mentor in their second semester. So I look at faculty, staff, and alumni. So I have all these resources. I got, money. I never had money to do anything in my whole life. Corporate America, everybody's got a budget problem. So I've always been used to really just working what I got. I got all content people. I've got alumni who are out there that are in the world that want to mentor somebody. They want to be engaged, especially with DEI work, so they want to be with us. So why not utilize them to mentor? Now we got Zoom, so you don't have to be in the same city or the same, you know what I mean? So the opportunity has broadened our horizons. We don't really look at it that way. And I for these people, I am a look at the glass half full person. I feel that no matter how bad it gets, we can always find that half full glass of water.
Wow, that's so good.
Because if you spend your life worrying about what you didn't get and what you can't get, then you'll never get it. And just like you, my God takes me on my path. And I didn't always look at it that way. So I had to have a few knocks and bumps. But I have seen in my experience, I have looked a lot of devastation. I've been abused. I have looked suicide in the face as a kid. I know what these students are going through. What you see in front of you has been through a lot. And I have a book coming out because I did survive the events of September 11th in New York City at the World Trade Center. And a friend did tell me, as I escaped to Brooklyn that day with bloody blistered feet, but I had feet. And I saw people make a choice to kill themselves that day that I will never forget. They are absolutely etched in my mind. But when I was on the train heading to New Jersey, back trying to get home the next day, a friend called me and he said, "Kids, you're in a bonus round, so make the best of it." And I didn't know what he meant, but I know what he means today. And if you had told me I didn't have a doctor, anybody by my name, remember, I had no college degree. I was working for the Wall Street Journal. I mean, if you said you're going to be a Dr. Pruitt and you're going to be talking to kids one day, I didn't even know if I like kids. You know, I didn't have any kids. I would have told you you were absolutely crazy out of your mind. There was no way I was going to be not doing what I did and dealing with kids all the time or young people or anything. And I've done all of the above in this bonus round that I'm in. And what I have learned in this bonus round is that I am them and they are me.
Wow. So good. That's so good. That's powerful. Thank you so much for your transparency and vulnerability right there. I just dropped the mic. I'm highly I mean, I'm even I'm saying young people or students. I'm kind of in that weird phase. I'm still in the millennial generation, and I'm inspired and empowered, and I just believe that your words today were not just for that young person out there, but you're talking to one right here. So you spoke directly to my core and really encouraged me today. So thank you, Dr. Pruitt. Thank you so much.
Well, it's certainly my pleasure. I love this work. I love being with my students, and they feel it, I think. And that's my life and my husband, and his family, but and my family. I have family back in Chicago, and I lived in Detroit. When I was a songwriter for Motown and all that, and did those things, I've had my own TV show. I've seen a
Oh,
lot.
wow.
I've had a lot of different experiences in my experience. So, I can send you a bio, and if you need one or whatever you need for this interview.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, after this interview, I'll contact you again, and because I'll see what the needs from a company perspective of what we're looking for. And yeah, I'll definitely be in touch. It's interesting because I lived in Chicago. I went my first 2 years in college. I was at Chicago State University. Yeah, on right off 95th. I was on their women's soccer team. So,
Actually, my last residence in Chicago was on 103rd and Cottage Road. So I
oh
lived.
wow.
Yeah, I saw that all that being built.
Oh wow, that's extraordinary. There's something, and you know what? I was watching a documentary on Hulu about. It's called City So Real, and they did this documentary about Chicago, and they recorded the whole mayor race, the whole race for mayor and everything. And I was so intrigued. I mean, Chicago, gets a bad rap because of the violence and stuff, but there's something about that city that's just like when anybody says Chicago, I'm like, I love Chicago. Like people at one point literally thought I was from Chicago. Yeah. So that's so awesome. So where are you located right now?
So I'm in Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
Okay.
And I've lived all over the country. I've traveled all over the world.
Wow.
I like New Jersey. I've lived, I've lived I actually left Chicago, which is, Chicago's pretty cool. When I was writing songs, before I really knew I was a songwriter, I went to New York and to see about some business with Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI. And I was offered a job in New York, but I was there for music. I wasn't there to get a job. I had a job, and I turned it down. But years later, I said, I turned a job down in New York, but when the lady asked me, I walked in the door to talk about my stuff. And she said, do you need a job? And she just on my walk, the way I walked in the room. And she said, how much do you make? Well, see, if I had known better, I would have given her a better answer, because she just like soaked that right up, because Chicago, how great it is. It wasn't on the level of salary that you get in New York. And I was probably undercutting myself, but I didn't need a job. But years later, of course, I worked in New York, but I always think back on that, because Chicago is a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope with whatever's going on in Chicago that the people stop doing it, whatever the negativity is and all that mob stuff, flash mobs, breaking up stores, and the voices just need to be heard. You let the voices be heard, and all that flash mob stuff should stop. Make that equity into the existence, and maybe all of that will go away. But we've got to have some sort of way. And I wish I had the acumen to be a politician. I probably would have started that at some point and done that, because I just think that we leadership, isn't a bottom up thing. We've got to have the leaders that we're voting for. We have to have them taking care of us. And so therefore, since whether or not I like what's happening now, I need to look at these students that are coming through in hopes that they will take us to the next place. Because, and I think, and no disrespect to millennials, but I think the Gen Zs, since they're in this thing here, that they will probably, their voices have been heard a little louder than others.
Oh,
and,
for sure.
And so I think that, that has some promise, but tribalism, if you go back to and religious wars and all of these things, I'm sure racism will prevail anyway, but we can have a better life. We can try to be better people. And that doesn't take a whole lot of money to do. We can just change. It starts with us. Any of this starts with us. And when I talk to people about perception, because it starts to me with perception, because people perceive you before you even talk to them. So I tell people, I say, if you just take this metaphor, because perception is based on unreliable and unverifiable information, and we get it, but it's based on our biases, actually, because a lot of biases come through our perceptions, like, so if you think about people you like or partners that you've been with, you checking them out before they even open their mouths. I know I did when I was single. I mean, I stand at a party and I tell people, I start with the shoes, I work up to, all of that, and so that's preference and bias. And so that comes, we weren't born like that, but it doesn't mean that we can't change it. So like, in the metaphor I like to give is when we're walking down the street together, and you and I are walking and we see this couple and they're not dressed quite the way we feel is good. We might say to each other, oh, where did they get those clothes? We might make that statement. How many times have you seen somebody dressed a certain way and you go like, oh, how is that? What's wrong with that? And so we get up closer to the people, and for some reason they ask us a question and we start talking and we learn. So we had that opinion, right? And that perception. So we learned that these are two people that are one step away from being homeless, and somebody gave them those clothes in order to go for a job interview, and they can't find their way and they're looking for directions. And by talking to these people, our behavior is going to change, because our perception was one thing. Now we're talking to them. And if we're the right people, our behavior changes, because we're going to become empathetic and sensitive to where they got those clothes from and why they're doing what they're doing and where they're going. And then our attitude is going to change on these two people. And then we're changing. Our perception has just changed. And my point is, we can't judge people by not getting to know people.
That's so good.
We have to learn about people, which starts with us first. We
Mhm.
have to work on us first, and then we can help other people. And once we do that, we will become better people,
Mm,
because we will learn what acceptance is, and we will dispel our intolerance
yeah.
because our behavior and attitudes change. And that is my philosophy on how we can become better people individually. And of
Mm,
course, be accountable and own it when we know. And I've caught myself in it with other Black people. We judge, we have this thing, like I had a conversation with a woman, I deemed her to be bougie. And I made a statement to her
mhm.
just the way I was thinking. And I really felt bad about that. I owned up to it. I had asked her a question without knowing her really well and not knowing
Mm,
her story. We all have a backstory. And I tell people when I step in front of the group, I say, okay, I'm giving you the ability to judge me right now. Judge me the way you see me. How do I look to you right now? And people don't know what to do with that. But I do tell them, so what do I look like to you?
wow.
And then I tell them I'm Black, I'm female, my pronouns, I'm cisgender, and I came from a very poor background. And people stop and go, wow, because,
Mm,
you know, because we do that. We do that all day and night. And that comes out that little word perception.
mm. That's so good. That changes everything. It really does. It really
Yep,
does. Wow, you never know what somebody's going through.
right. That is so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That is so true. So anyway, I
Yeah.
have someone waiting for me, but I hope we covered everything you need. I know I can go off on a tangent. I love to talk, you can tell.
I love it. Thank you so much. You added so much value to today. And I will be in touch regarding this if I need any other interview materials. And I just thank you so much for your time, Dr. Pruitt.
Well, it's certainly my pleasure. Certainly my pleasure. And you have to tell me what this turns into and what else you might need to make it successful for you.
All righty, we'll do. You have a great day.
Okay, you too, Chloe. Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you too.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.